Yeah.
Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, world.
Hello, Joe. And Neo. Woo! It's been a big week. What's happened?
Huge.
My God. Huge. I'm going to check that our link is working and that we're actually live, so I don't screw up like last time. We are live. I've got confirmation.
Great.
We're live.
All right, Randy, Wendy, if you can hear us.
Yes. Super chats are most welcome. Yeah, that was big last week. Over the weekend when we had a chat with Wendy, we got a bunch of super chats. Well, Wendy got a bunch of super chats from her viewers, which she very kindly put towards our little project. And what did we get? She chose a collectible for us and transferred it. So very, very happy news. We got a Deadpool, a rare Deadpool, in fact, not just any Deadpool, a rare Deadpool. Super cool.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone who donated.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who did, and I think and Randy, I think, was partying at the time, and was donating from the dance floor. It seemed to be because we got a heap of super chats from Randy.
Lots of capitalization in the.
That's right. That's right.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, it was good.
He's been our biggest investor to this point, I think.
True.
Yeah, I agree. He has. Yeah. That was really, really crazy. What else has been happening? We sold our secret rare, the comic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brock.
Thank you, Brock. And Brock, what did he say? And that was he DMing? Was it you, Matt? And he was saying it was a steal.
Yeah.
So did you stuff it up again, James? Twice?
No, he thinks everything's undervalued because he sees where it's all going. So he's scooping everything up.
But we got it. It's now down to like 200 and something. So we saw.
Thank you so much, Brock.
Thank you, Brock. And hopefully we get Brock on the show next year. He's keen to come on. So.
Awesome. That would be
give us some tips, some pro tips.
With the proceeds of selling that secret rare 129, I don't know if you know, but I scooped up a couple of comics last night. Like I was sick of waiting for permission. I thought just ask forgiveness with my great judgment.
Trigger happy.
So I saw a few of these. What is it? It's Fantastic Four number 5, which I have it on good authority from the Comics and Crypto guys when they were on with us a week or so ago. They were saying that is very undervalued. They said not financial advice, but you know what? I'm taking this financial advice, guys. And it had been in sort of like the 60s, might have been nudging 70, and I saw it for 31 and 32. So I picked up 3 of them, and it's now gone up to 43. So you're welcome. No big deal.
We should also say that nothing we ever talk about is financial advice, too, on each stream to avoid getting sued.
That's true. Or charity advice either.
Yeah, exactly. Or charity advice. True.
Conscience advice.
No advice.
It's moral advice. What else has been happening? We had, like an hour ago, we had Gibby, who has been organising this hashtag Christmas Eve giveaway, which has gone nuts across the socials. And so we got on board. We're doing a Christmas giveaway of our own using the hashtag Christmas. Well, it's Christmas VeVe, but we pronounce it Christmas Vive. We were giving away the thing. Joe, that was your collectible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we're giving that one away. Check out our Twitters. You'll see it pinned to the top of the page there about how to enter. But there's a couple more hours left on that competition, and we're going to have one more competition in the next few hours before Christmas Day, where we're giving away one more collectible as part of that. But Gibby, I don't know if you guys caught Dan Lee's interview with Gibby, but it was great, and Gibby gave us a big shout out.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Nobility.
I know. Yeah, what did he call us?
I think
He described our project as noble, and so
Generous.
Every
extended
tweet-
that.
every tweet now is hashtag nobility. Wow.
Yeah,
I love
VeVe
it.
Nobility. That's great.
VeVe nobility, yeah.
There was there's actually, speaking of nobility, there was I got a message from someone saying that there was telling me the story of a flatulator, I believe in the Middle Ages, who was have you heard about this guy?
That was his job.
No.
Okay, so his job was as a flatulator. He was a clown for some sort of court, and his name was Roland the Farter, and is known in contemporary records as Roland la Fartière, Rolondulus le Fartière, or Roland le Porteur, and he was a medieval flatulist who lived in 12th century England. Roland the Farter's given name was George. And he was given, as a gift, he was given a manor in Suffolk and 30 acres of land in return for his services as a farting gesture. I mean, for King Henry. And this is the thing that I love. It says each year he was obliged to perform, and this is in Latin: unum soltum et siffletum et unum bumbulum. King's court at Christmas, and that translates as one jump and whistle and one fart. And he was awarded like
I'm all for working royals.
Yeah.
Pato, you were born in the wrong era.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Totally.
So we are anyway. But so back to Gibby. Gibby's doing. I'll get carried away there. Gibby's doing great stuff. Check out his Twitter account and his interview with Dan Lee, because Gibby provides really good advice on how to flip from something small to something big. So he went from $125 all the way up to $100,000 on VeVe. Got an amazing story and really generous guy. He's trying to spread Christmas cheer, getting everyone to give away a collectible on the Twitters. Another huge shout out to Paul. We got our very first Patreon. Paul is on board. We really appreciate that. Thanks for your support.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
So we've got a really exciting guest today. Shall we bring him in? We should let him in. He's baking in the sun. In fact, I can see at the moment he's covered in a towel.
He's turned into a cup of water.
All I can see there is not a man, but just a puff of smoke. We have Josh Puff of Smoke Hallwright, who is out there baking on the deck. Josh is Humanitarian Lead at Oxfam Australia, and we'll learn a bit about Josh in a moment. Before I introduce you, Josh, are you at risk at the moment, sitting out there on the balcony? I'll answer for Josh. The answer is yes. He's unfortunately burnt to a crisp, and Josh will no longer be joining us. So thanks for joining us.
Oh no!
I wonder if his computer's overheated. It's probably what's happening.
I think everything is overheated.
Yeah.
Well,
That
Neo,
sucks when that happens.
you were constantly afraid for my complexion. You once said that I was so white that you could see my heart beating through my chest. So it's usually me that you are afraid of, sitting on a balcony.
My favorite quote was, I think it's either Martin Short or Steve Martin, but one of them needs to use sunscreen that's SP Infinity. I think that's the same for you, James.
James, I still remember that your father would never put sunscreen on. I'd go over to your place as kids. Is this not the right forum for this discussion?
No, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, and so he put the fear of God in me about sunscreen, because he was like, this stuff blocks out the sun. How can this be good?
Yeah, it
and
was
James's
one of those...
father is a doctor, by the way.
Not medical advice. But while we're waiting for Josh, he's disconnected and he's gonna try to get back in again.
He has just let me know that his computer did overheat.
There we go.
Yeah.
Not
Australia.
Not
Hey, we've got
technology.
someone in the comment section.
Oh, cool.
Evan.
Evan, hello.
Yeah, welcome.
Who the hell is this? Well, like, we can give you a recap. Should we give you a recap about what we're doing? First of all, none of us got Steve but Willie. Very disappointing. Did you? Tell us in the comments. We are. Who wants to tell Evan what we're doing? Oh, we've got Josh. This is actually really good timing. We've got Josh back.
Hey,
Josh, there you are.
sorry about that. The computer literally overheated. It's fucking dead.
Oh my god, Matt called it.
Wow. That sucks, man. I hope it comes back.
It's a work computer, so fingers crossed.
Full of sensitive information. This could be a potential problem. Josh, are you
Yeah,
sitting in
exactly.
the bathroom at the moment? Is that like the one safe space that you have to talk?
No, I'm outside the hotel door. Living large for you, lot. Living
You gotta
large.
put the no room service tag on there. Otherwise, they're gonna try and get in. Oh yeah, good.
Nice. So we've got someone in the chats actually, Josh, and his name is Evan, and he got. Oh wow, okay.
Two Willies on the drop just by itself is a weird sentence.
Yeah.
All right, we'll explain. There's a lot of explaining here to do. So Evan was asking us what our project is, and in fact, his exact wording was, "Who the hell is this lol?" And that tells you about what a big deal we are in the VeVe community. So we'll explain to Evan and Josh, to you as well, what the Thing to Donny project is all about in a moment. But let's first introduce Josh, who is back from the dead. Josh is Humanitarian Lead at Oxfam Australia. And Josh has been involved in all sorts of interesting stuff, a lot of it involving humanitarian aid and disaster relief for organizations like the Red Cross, the UN, MSF. Anyone speak French who can do a much better pronunciation than I? Josh, go for it.
Médecins sans frontières.
So much better. Thank you so much. I didn't embarrass myself. And Josh's work has taken him from places like Australia to Ethiopia, the Philippines and Afghanistan. And he's currently also exploring the use of blockchain technology in the humanitarian sector and undertaking, let's just add one more thing to your intimidating CV, undertaking this PhD looking into, and I'm quoting from your LinkedIn here, Josh, how power is expressed in the financial systems used to fund disaster responses. So Josh, welcome to the Thing to Donny. It's really great to have you here, and we're very excited to have you as a representative of Oxfam.
Thanks very much, James, and thanks, gents. Looking forward to the chat.
So to answer Evan's question and to explain to you, Josh, and our viewers as well what we're doing. Hey, Wendy. So we currently, we are 4 idiots who are relatively new to VeVe. We started with a collectible called The Thing from the Fantastic Four, which we bought for about $4 US. And our aim is to flip that all the way to a Donny, which is the most expensive thing on the app, which is currently listed in a secondary marketplace. It's currently listed for about 100 grand. So our aim is to buy and sell, just trade our way all up from something worth $4 all the way to something worth 100 grand. And once we have that cash, we're going to donate it to charity. The first charity that we've announced is Oxfam, and we're going to hear from Josh today all about Oxfam and the work they do. And the second charity will be announced shortly. So really, we've had a lot of people who are super interested in where the money's going and the sorts of work that Oxfam does. So where should we start? Who wants to kick off?
I'll kick off. Josh, tell us a bit about, and tell our audience a little bit about Oxfam, just in case some of our viewers haven't heard of Oxfam, and then tell us a bit about your role.
Yeah, sure. And hopefully you can't hear the vacuum cleaner in the background.
Oh, good.
Cleaning staff in the next room. Yeah, so Oxfam is an international charity. We're in 60 odd countries around the world, trying to do something about inequality and poverty that is rife in large parts of the world. So the work that we do started back in the Second World War, and it was pretty much around giving assistance to civilians in Greece affected by a blockade. So there were two parts that I think helps illustrate what Oxfam does. One was providing immediate assistance to people suffering from conflict, or the effects of conflict, but also advocating the UK government to change its policies. The UK government at the time said it was illegal to provide any assistance to civilians in occupied territories. So since that, in setting up in the UK in the early 1940s, we have now operations in, I think, 68 countries. We do a lot of work in the humanitarian space, so trying to support people affected by crises, whether that be conflict or disasters or anything in between. We do a lot of advocacy around trying to shift policies, change behaviors, etc. And we do some development programming, so sort of longer term projects to support people in countries that have sort of extreme inequalities and a lot of poverty. Our role in that is in Oxfam Australia. So we're part of the Oxfam Confederation, the Oxfam network. And my role is the Humanitarian Lead and Blockchain Advisor. So the Humanitarian Lead part is the substantive bit, and that's mainly around trying to get assistance of any type from Australia to country teams, Oxfam country teams in various different crises around the world. Whether it be in the occupied Palestinian territories or Lebanon, through to South Sudan, Ethiopia, close to home, the Philippines is the sort of timely one with the massive cyclone that tore through the Philippines a week or two ago.
So that gives us a good idea of the sort of work you do. If with a project like ours, with trying to raise money for Oxfam, can you run us through different ways that for our viewers who are wanting to get involved in it, how can you sort of direct any funding or any donations that you receive?
Yeah, sure. There's lots of different ways people contribute to Oxfam. Some is sort of regular contributions or big donations, something similar to what you guys are doing, that effectively goes into a bucket that we can use anywhere, and it gives us the flexibility to be responsive and to meet the needs and sort of do the advocacy that doesn't always get the airtime, the public awareness, but is still critical. And then there are other ways to do it, which I think is probably a bit more relevant to the work that you guys are doing, which is very specific targeted appeals, like campaigns, or trying to raise money for a very specific crisis response. So at the moment, Oxfam Australia has 5 crisis response going on that are very targeted in how the money is used. So just very quickly, there's the COVID-19 pandemic response. And that's probably the worst example to lead off with, because
what was it? Does it start with a C or a K?
COVID-19.
COVID.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up.
You probably haven't heard of it. And so that's in quite a few countries, obviously. We should update it and just be like the Delta appeal or the Omicron appeal or whatever it might be. But that's probably less relevant. There's 4 specific appeals that I think are more topical or more relevant to this chat. One's around the Rohingya response, for people that may or may not remember, a few years back in Myanmar or Burma, there was some targeted violence against a particular ethnic group, the Rohingya, and they fled across the border from Myanmar into Bangladesh and now live in the world's largest refugee camp. There's almost 1 million people residing in camps there. And so one of the appeals that we have is raising money for Oxfam's work inside those camps and in the communities that around the camps. And then there are 3 other appeals. One's the Horn of Africa. So you and your audience may be aware of the current conflict in northern Ethiopia. So that's the sort of focus of that appeal at the moment. But there's a lot of crises in the Horn of Africa that we're responding to: South Sudan floods, Somalia drought, the Sudanese political conflict, etc. So and I can talk more in detail about exactly how the money is spent or anything if it's of interest. And same goes for Syria and Yemen, the 2 other specific appeals. The Syria conflict, one of the longest running conflicts in the world at the moment, and it's a regional crisis and has a lot of challenging pieces to it. But Oxfam is one of the only NGOs allowed to work inside Syria. And so we're doing a bunch of work there, and Yemen as well. So the ongoing conflict in Yemen, it's very complicated and complex conflict. Talk about seas. There's a lot of seas in that alliteration. And it's quite hard to work in all of these crises, but particularly in Yemen, there's a divide between the north and the south and a little bit in the east. And so we're operational in all of the areas and providing assistance, whether it be drilling boreholes or trucking fresh water or providing food vouchers and the like to communities affected by violence.
How do you...
So pretty much just like low-key paper pushing every day, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing major.
Yeah, great.
Less stress. I mean, listening to you describe it, it's something that sometimes doesn't really enter your mind when you donate money to a charity. The money goes to an organization and it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. You might get an email every now and again saying about how your donation has made a difference. But the way that you describe it there is really vivid when you're talking about some of the people who are on the ground and the work that they do. It makes me think of how big an operation it actually is. Somewhere like Syria, for example. Can you describe just some of what is involved, whether it's the number of people involved in your efforts in Syria, or the type of expertise that Oxfam sort of employs in areas like that? Can you just give it a bit of a sense of what it's like on the ground?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, in Syria, I sent a little bit of money from some of the appeals, the Syria appeal that we raised a couple of months ago. And that was I'm sure we're all very familiar with the geography of Syria, but there's a spot in the east, Deir ez-Zor, that is effectively in the desert, but the Euphrates River flows through it. The Euphrates of cradle of civilization, etc. There's been that water level in the Euphrates has been dropping significantly, partly due to climate change, partly due to a few other factors. So much so that the pumps that take water from the Euphrates to irrigate the crops and to provide drinking water to that city aren't reaching the water table anymore, because it's dropped so low. So I sent some money that people have been very generous in contributing to the Syria appeal that helped that actually bought about 100 meters worth of pipe, literally piping. And that it's difficult enough to get that in a crisis. And so we were able to use that money to buy the pipes, and then working with the local government authorities and some local organizations, install 100 meters worth of piping so that it could get to the dropping water table in the Euphrates to literally provide water to 100,000 people.
Wow.
And that cost 30 grand.
No way.
So there's lots of examples like that I can give that the money goes to use, and it literally goes to saving people's lives.
I thought you were going to say 30 million. Like 30 grand.
I would love 30 million. If you, if the Donny gets to 30 million, I'd be happy.
It might, inflation. It might make it.
It's true.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really cool for us to sort of motivate us and hopefully motivate some of our supporters. 30 grand is just so little, and yet the impact on 100,000 people's lives, that's insane. I had no idea. So you're an interesting cat because you're doing the practical stuff and you're also doing the theoretical stuff as well with you're the research side of things, sorry, I should say, with your PhD. But one thing that we're particularly interested in as well, and I think our audience would be, is blockchain. I know some of the guys are keen to ask you some questions about that.
Josh, tell us about some of the interesting applications that blockchain has in the humanitarian space.
There's a few. There's a bunch of stuff going on in the sector trying to explore the technology and how different use cases, some which are probably more familiar, that use stablecoins or types of cryptocurrency to help in providing cash and voucher assistance to people affected by disasters. And so Oxfam's, we're doing that in Vanuatu. We're scaling it up in the Solomons. We've done it in Venezuela, which is a really interesting case. But then there's a bunch of other use cases as well. So we started using the technology for a different type of fundraising. So using smart contracts and conditional giving. So that if then give, if a condition's met, then you give. Right the way through to like supply chains, tracking labor rights and whether people are treated well in supply chains, and using the verification and sort of uncorruptibility, for want of butchering the English language, functions of the technology to start to play around with that. And there's a few other cases like using microinsurance and so forth. So there's lots of different use cases, and it's something that we're looking to, Oxfam is looking to really scale up and see how far we can take that.
Can I pick one, because I think there's so many interesting applications, but one that I think, as lay people is something that we can grapple with is the supply chain tracking. Can you tell us a bit about how, tethering supply chain tracking to a public ledger is actually helpful to humanitarian efforts?
Yeah. So Oxfam hasn't done that as such, but there's other organizations that have, that's effectively using, like, tying blockchain with RFD tags and the like, to ensure that not only we can find the provenance, like where goods come from and who has touched the humanitarian goods, so to know exactly where things are and the various different actors in the supply chain, but also I think really importantly in the humanitarian space, and we've done this with organic rice supply chain in Cambodia actually, is to verify that people are getting paid the right amounts in times of crises. Usually, I think Matt mentioned the inflation issue before. You get localized inflation because goods are at a premium. And so to be able to bake in immutable contracts so that suppliers and the small guys are effectively paid properly throughout all of that is really important. And it helps reestablish markets. It helps communities get back up on their feet after crises and the like.
Fantastic.
Is that the sort of thing that could come through, like the end user? Is that the sort of thing that could be? I think he's asking me to be quiet. I think I was talking to Oh, hello. How are you?
Hello.
You weren't the one. You weren't the one having a sleep before. I think she's.
Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead. For our viewers, the reason why Josh was out on the balcony before burning to a crisp when we started was because his daughter was asleep in the next room.
Okay, it's not now.
But I think it was a baby daughter. Is that right? And this is the grown-up. Anyway, look, I'm just going into great detail about your family, Josh. So the I think the thing that is really interesting about supply chain, and Joe mentioned it before, which is that it's just the easiest for us to, as users, to think about our interaction with goods and knowing where they come from. So the sort of what you were just describing to us before with the organic rice example, is that something that has the ability to be visible to an end user once they actually go to purchase, rice from a market, that you will actually be able to get a tick of approval that this is 100%, not involving slavery or anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. That's the intent. We haven't managed to get there with that particular example.
Yeah.
Just some of the complications with particular stakeholders. So that was very much the intent. It's effectively using it as like a fair trade, like a fair trade on steroids.
Yep.
That you can be able to verify that you scan the barcode or QR code or whatever it is, and that you can see that people who work on the rice farms definitely got paid the right amounts at the right time, etc.
So it's like an incorruptible version of the heart tick, Australia, right? Which, I mean,
Immutable even.
I wouldn't draw that parallel with massive meat consumption. But sure.
But the criticism of the Heart Foundation tick of approval was that it was alleged that you could basically buy it. And so, the consumer would see the tick and say, well, this is good for my heart. But in fact, behind the scenes, allegedly, the criticism that some were saying was that it wasn't squeaky clean or 100%.
Not medical advice.
Not medical advice. Do your own research.
Not diet advice.
I think you guys are covered.
Yeah. But it sounds like a more transparent
version of that. Yeah.
That's really cool. Really cool.
Josh, can you tell us about some of the main risks to adopting blockchain technology, for international aid orgs? Like what's stopping greater adoption?
I think there's probably a few things. One is the literacy. I think you guys have touched on this, and I think one of the interesting things about VeVe is the accessibility. So you have the technology stack, and blockchain's pretty much almost at the bottom. And then the user experience, the user interface, etc., at the top. And I think for a lot of the humanitarian aid sector, that it's still a ways off to having things that are the options, to have enough options that are accessible and easy to use to be able to work with the technology more. The flip side of that is, in my experience, this is the first time that I know of where civil society and humanitarian aid sector is shaping the design of such advanced technology from the outset. We've been involved in some really detailed conversations to shape particular chains or particular use cases of particular chains. And sitting down, like in Vanuatu, we had coders sitting down literally with the community saying, the community is like, I don't like this bit, or that bit doesn't work for me. And they're literally changing there and there.
Amazing.
And that's really cool. But yeah, so the literacy and still lots of people confuse cryptocurrencies with blockchain, and so there's the hesitation and so forth. But yeah, there's more and more people starting to engage with it in different ways, whether it be through crypto philanthropy and accessing new fundraising markets to some of the stuff that Oxfam's done and some UN agencies are doing.
Josh, I might dive a little deeper in on that question. I'm just interested to know. I did have a brief stint working for a tech startup in the sector about 7 years ago, and we were trying to bring a piece of technology into charities, and we found there was just enormous resistance to change internally, adopting new technology, and that comes with the territory of big organizations and stuff. But one of the things we've been staggered just watching is the growth of VeVe, the growth curve. I think when we got interested, it had about 30,000 users, and now it seems to be hurtling towards 1.5 million active monthly users. Like, what can be learned there for a charity like Oxfam, in terms of building that user base? Because I think most of the users, as we've touched on, aren't aware that crypto is in the background of this particular platform. I guess I'm interested in what's going on internally and what are some of the areas of focus with that in mind. Gamification, etc.
Yeah. So there's a few threads to that, in my view. One, the easy response is, I wrote a paper on this. So with a colleague that talks about some of these challenges, but park that for a sec. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 pieces to that particular puzzle. One is that there's two major differences between an organization like Oxfam and an organization like VeVe. Is that VeVe is allowed by shareholders and the public expectation to spend a lot on marketing and advertising and relationships with big corporates and the like. It's less acceptable for a charity to do that, unfortunately, in my view. There's TED Talks and there's lots of stuff written on, there's an expectation for companies to spend money to make money, but that doesn't hold true for expectations for charities. People want to know that 99 cents out of every dollar, or whatever the percentage is, goes to Jimmy's hand in Kambakta West in Mongolia or wherever it might be. So that if Oxfam comes out and says, we spend 50 cents of every dollar raised, thanks, son. Service with a smile.
Well done.
And if we spend that much on marketing, we might raise overall much more money than what we do at the moment. So we're able to affect a lot more change in the communities that we work with. But the ratio is not acceptable. And so I think that's a difference. But also I think to your point around gamification and those kind of things, in a lot of ways, the aid sector is old. Like, it is still, there's a lot of conversations internally at the moment around the sort of colonial nature of a lot of charities, a white savior complex, etc. And what that looks like from a fundraising perspective is really tricky. Like, we've moved away from, putting ads on TV with starving African babies and flies around their eyes and really undignified, disrespectful kind of imagery. But it's a real tension because that works. Like, unfortunately, that's what people expect in wealthy countries, and that's kind of some of the expectations and perspectives that Oxfam and others are trying to shift. But when I say I work for a charity, most people have in their mind, oh, isn't he lovely? Isn't that a nice thing to do? And so when I say to them, I do it for the money, then heads explode. It's like, it can't be a professional space in most people's minds. It's no, I'm here to save the poor African baby. Here's my money. And so fundraising wise, it's a long-winded way of saying, on the fundraising side, it's really hard to move to shift different ways. That's not to say that there's some really cool examples of that happening. And things like Thank You Water and the like, you're probably familiar with. that have had huge success in doing that and taking us a much more like startup, investment capital kind of approach to raising money for charities. And there is some value in those kind of options. I think Oxfam is starting to head towards some more innovative ways, like the smart donations, the if then give app. Those kind of toying around with different ways of engaging people in the issues that we work with. But yeah, it's a slow, as you say, Matt, from your own experience, it's a slog.
Can you explain if then give to the heathens amongst us who don't understand?
It'll start. Now I'm going to balls up the startup language, but probably beta testing. So we've done one round of testing, and there'll be testing starting in January with about 5,000 users. It's effectively an app that you don't have to trust a charity to use. Is the principle. And so we find that trust in charities is going down, and people, I think, one of the things that's come through this conversation and is a common sort of perspective now is people want to know exactly where their money's going, or maybe not exactly, but they definitely want to be able to say it had an impact or I got a return on my investment. So the if then give app, or smart donations is what it used to be called, is effectively an app where you can set conditions that are verified by a third party, so not Oxfam, to say if these conditions are met, I'll donate money to these types of programs at Oxfam. So it can range from the more simplistic, like if there's a cyclone that crosses into the Philippines in the next 2 months, I'll donate $10 to Oxfam's International Crisis Fund. All the way to some really interesting stuff around, and so that's verified by the weather bureaus and the like. To every time Scott Morrison says something silly around climate change, I'll donate to Oxfam's climate change campaign. Verified by Twitter, an API that scrapes Twitter feeds.
Shit, that'd be lucrative.
All the way to some more like, as you're saying, Matt, to some really different ways of engaging people to say, all right, I will. Like we have integration with Google Fitbit. Is it Google Fitbit? To say, okay, I want to set personal goals of, running 10Ks a day for the next month or something ridiculous. And either if I meet them, I'll donate, or if I don't meet them, I'll donate, depending on what drives your own behavior, and have it verified by Fitbit. And then you can start to get your friends involved. All right, I'll give you $5 if you run 10Ks today. And that money ends up going into, Oxfam's responses in Yemen, for example, where people have to walk 3 kilometers to get a bucket of water. Okay, so you ran 10Ks, cool, good on you. Here's $5 for the person so that they don't have to walk 3Ks with 15-liter bucket of water.
Hey Neo, I'll donate I'll donate $10 to Scott Morrison every day you don't run 20Ks.
Just 10.
All right, let's up it. Make it 100.
That's all. That's a really cool concept.
I'm just looking after your health, mate.
Love it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so there's things like that are happening. If you want to get involved, let us know, and I'll flick you the details.
I think our viewers would be really interested in that. If you can send through the details and we can put it in the show notes. It's such an interesting concept, and it's so motivating for an individual to be able to do that. I love it.
Yeah, cool. Can do.
We've actually, on your point before, you raised something talking about where people want to know the specifics of where the money is going, or there's a fair bit of suspicion and lack of trust in charities. We have had some, not many, but a couple of comments of people hearing that we're doing this for charity and being suspicious about it and saying like they've been scammed before, for example, and how can we be sure that the money's actually going to go to charity? And I can understand why people have those concerns. And as much as we're obviously like up front, we're four blokes. We're not a charity ourselves. We're just four guys who are trying to do a fun project and donate the proceeds to charity to people who actually know what they're doing, like you. But having you on actually is really important, I think, for our viewers and our followers to understand like where the money is going. Like it actually is something that we feel a responsibility towards our followers to actually show that we are working with a very reputable organization who knows what they're doing. You also have had to verify us with Oxfam, including, this is actually quite eye-opening. Do you want to tell us about how you do your due diligence with us?
Yeah, sure. So for any, there's a few different ways, and it gets tighter the more you donate. So there's a whole range of anti-money laundering legislation that we need to comply with, as well as counter-terrorism financing. That we, for larger donations, I think over 10,000, we do this to, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But for larger donations, we have to prove to the regulators that we are doing due diligence to make sure that nobody's using a charity to wash dirty money, which you guys definitely aren't, so you're above board.
We made it.
So, hey, yeah, you made it.
All right.
And we have to do that for all the money that we send overseas. There's all the tax compliance issues that we have to abide by for deductible gift recipient status. So you donate to charity, there's a tax incentive for that, and we have to comply with ATO's legislation. There's the Australian Charities and Australian
Not-for-Profit Commission.
Thank you, Not-for-Profit Commission. The ACNC, which has a whole bunch more legislation that we have to comply with and regulation, as does the peak bodies, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. There's, in my view, and clearly I'm biased, but the NGO sector in Australia is one of the most highly regulated, highly compliance-driven, necessarily so in some cases, sector in the Australian economy. It's incredible how much due diligence we have to do. So when people say, I worry about where the money goes, for the larger NGOs, you can be assured it's going to be okay. We have to account for every $5, every $2, like if there's discrepancies more than that between budgets and actuals or the like, we get hauled over the coals. And I know people that work in banks where they're like, really, we write off any discrepancies under 5 million. It's like, I'll take your discrepancy. So there's a different, again, it's the expectations and the different ways of doing it.
Wow, that's insane. Neo.
And that other thing I should have said on that, James, when you were saying about, to the great work that you guys are doing in terms of raising money for charities, I think is that you will get a whole bunch of information back around where the money goes and the impact it has that you can share with your audience. That'll be quite detailed, and that I will personally vouch for and professionally do so as well.
Awesome. Thanks.
Well, I think on that, the money that we're getting really is going towards these digital collectibles and us flipping them every which way and when we can. And what's the last count of where our portfolio is at the moment?
Oh, so it's grown again since we last updated it. But last time I checked, it was 1,100, I believe. 1,200 US dollars.
That's not bad. How long has it been now? 6 weeks?
Yeah.
6 weeks of sort of flipping?
Yeah.
I guess it wouldn't be a proper stream if we didn't ask you, Josh. Do you yourself like collectibles? Did you grow up on collectibles?
I did. Growing up, the basketball cards down the local milk bar were the go-to collectibles, and I've still got them lying around somewhere. You remember you used to go through the book and try and figure out if you had a Jordan something.
Were you an upper deck guy or a top shots guy?
Yeah, exactly. Upper deck all the way. But since then, no, I've done bugger all in the collectible space, in NFTs or digital collectibles or anything like that. I don't have any. It's interesting so I have blockchain advisor in my title, and people are like, oh, here we go. Here's another sort of blockchain enthusiast, evangelical that's going to ram cryptocurrencies down my throat. And when I tell people I don't own any crypto, all of a sudden my credibility goes up. Not saying that that's the case here at all, but
majorly shill our collectibles to you.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole point of, imagine that. Would that be so awfully sleazy if the whole point that we got Josh on for was to just see if he'd buy one of our collectibles?
Yeah, I'll come back on in a couple of weeks and be like, I've just wasted my entire savings account on these collectibles that these
or invested.
Push on me.
Smartly invested. Hello, Randy.
Yeah, get this bread.
Get this bread, boys. You know it. Randy's a great supporter of the show, and big figure like Wendy in the VeVe world.
Josh, we've talked about this in the past, but I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about how blockchain has been used to support fundraising in international aid. We've talked about like NFT auctions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I tried to get it going. It's still on the cards, and it's sort of taking a leaf out of your book in some ways, around sort of NFTs in the art world and using those as fundraisers. But it seems the art world is still grappling with the conceptual challenge to their existence by NFTs. There's also a huge growing sector around crypto philanthropy. So people that have made their money through crypto, donating crypto to charities. And so that's a space that Oxfam's starting to get into, early days, but starting to. And part of what we've found is appealing to that sector of philanthropy is the blockchain work that we're already doing. And they see as sort of like for like contributions. And there's lots of different challenges with crypto philanthropy, but we're sort of certainly working through them and have advice from various different accountancy firms and legal firms and the like to do so. So yeah, there's a few different ways to do it, and I think that we'll see things like what you guys are doing and others starting to become a bit more prevalent in the years to come.
Hopefully we're setting
trailblazers.
Yeah.
Right. FA of crypto philanthropy happening right here. That's a little VeVe joke there, Josh. I'm sorry. That's a real in joke.
It's like, is that a football association thing?
Yeah, it's a first.
Jokes are great, better explained as well. So,
like once a stream, I must walk out off screen. We're coming up to an hour, Josh, and And really thank you for your time. You've been so generous, especially with having children who are trying to sleep and getting burnt to a crisp on the balcony.
On the computer, I'm worried about.
I would be very worried too. Did you have any sunscreen on? This is important to know.
On the computer.
Yes. It's a living, breathing thing as well. So we've learned a lot about where the funds could go, and we're still, that really, I think for us and for our supporters, you've described it beautifully about where the money can go, and also the future of blockchain technology in the humanitarian sector is just like mind blowing. It's been such a fascinating discussion, and we're going to have an announcement to make in the coming weeks in the new year about specifically where we'll direct the funds. But really interested, obviously, in hearing from our community as well about your thoughts. So if you have your own ideas or suggestions, then just let us know. Reach out to us on Twitter or leave a comment. Love to hear all about it. But shall we wrap this little puppy up?
This conversation makes me want to get the Donny so bad.
Yes,
I know.
Same.
true. And we're getting closer and closer. It mightn't seem like it because we're at like $1,000 and we're reaching for $100,000. But I mean, currently, just for a bit of sort of perspective, we've done over a 300x since we started.
Like, and we only need 100x from here.
100x from here. So the hard work's done.
You're kind of halfway. You've already gone 2 orders of magnitude. You only need 2 orders of magnitude more.
Yes. So we're nearly there. Basically, we'll be there in a couple of weeks, early New Year. But I think there was also a really good from Randy Chavez, who commented before. He was saying in a recent stream to set a goal in terms of time to achieve your goal. And that's something that we'll be working towards as well. And we can announce that in the new year too. And hopefully have some good news pretty soon once we hit that, Donny, because it's going to happen. Josh, thank you so much for being part of this. Really appreciate your support. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks to you guys.
Thanks, Josh.
It's awesome. And
awesome, Josh.
Power to you and your audience. Thanks heaps.
Thank you. See you, Josh. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Josh.